The US-Israel conflict against Iran, it has rapidly spread across West Asia. In drone strikes on Tuesday, the US embassy in Riyadh was hit, according to the Saudi officials, while the Iranian Red Crescent Society has stated that at least 787 people, they have been killed in strikes on Iran. As civilians' panic sets in, the US embassy in Israel, it has told the American nationals they are on their own if they want to get out of the country.
The U.S. Embassy is not in a position at this time to evacuate or directly assist Americans in departing Israel. The Israeli Ministry of Tourism has begun operating shuttles to the Taba border crossing. To be added to the passenger list for a shuttle, you must register via the ministry's evacuation form. The U.S. Embassy cannot make any recommendation, the Ministry of Tourism's shuttle. If you choose to avail yourself of this option to depart, the U.S. government cannot guarantee your safety.
Well, the situation to the north of Israel has once again escalated, with missiles being exchanged across the Lebanese border. RT's Charlotte Dubensky reports from Jerusalem.
We have got 11 confirmed deaths as a result of Iranian missiles being able to penetrate the multi-layered air defense systems here in Israel and hit the ground. 9 of those killed in one location. Around 1,000 people have been evacuated to hospitals over the last few days. Of those, 150 remain seeking medical care, 4 of those in critical condition. That is the price of this war for Israelis so far, a war that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said was necessary not just to protect Israel, not just to protect the wider Middle East. I'm not sure it feels quite protected at the moment, but also to protect the world, suggesting that Iran was just months away from being able to build a shelter for its nuclear facilities that would have essentially made it impenetrable, and that's why he says this retaliatory strike launched by the US and Israel on Saturday morning and since then was so needed. Now, he's also been questioned about the civilian casualties in Iran, hundreds of people dead there, and about apparent targeting of civilian facilities. He had this stark statement contrasting the US and Israel with Iran.
Here's the difference between us. These mass murderers in Tehran, they target civilians. We in Israel and America target mass terrorists. That's a nutshell of the difference, and we have to protect our world against these people.
We know on the ground in Tehran there have been hundreds of civilians who have been killed as a result of these US and Israeli strikes. The most tragic down in the south of Iran. And this is where an elementary school of girls was hit. Another potential war crime is that Israel says it has attacked and destroyed the HQ of the Iranian state TV. This is IRIB. Now, it says it attacked that, calling it a legitimate target because it says it was broadcasting for the destruction of Israel. Well, we have heard from Iran State TV on Tuesday morning saying that its facilities are still operational and it wasn't attacked. But had it been, or if it has been, then that again could constitute another war crime carried out by Israel and the US.
Well, the Israeli Defense Forces have bombed Beirut for a second consecutive day. It followed Hezbollah claiming an attack on an airbase in northern Israel. As the IDF confirms, its soldiers are operating in southern Lebanon and a major ground advance is in the offing.
We are preparing for the possibility of Hezbollah expanding their attacks against Israeli civilians. This includes reinforcing aerial defense systems and troops' presence. Let me be clear. This is not a ground maneuver into Lebanon. It is a tactical step to create an additional layer of security for the residents of northern Israel. Hezbollah once again chose the Iranian regime over the safety of the Lebanese people, all for the sake of a fight they cannot win. They will once again realize their mistake and pay the price. Because we will continue operating to defend the people of Israel.
You can probably see behind me, this is the smoke that's billowing from the southern suburbs of Beirut, known as Dahir. This is the area that was heavily targeted during the 66-day war. It really bore the brunt of that, and it's under attack again once more. Now, the attack started in the early hours of Monday morning when we heard these 8 to 10 blasts, and then again over the course of the day, and the attacks have been pretty much relentless since then. Over the course of the night, we know that there were a number of bombings, and then at around 6 a.m., a number of targeted strikes. The Israeli Defense Force issued a number of evacuation orders. Now, we know that from people on the ground inside Dahir that a number of residential buildings were targeted, along with the Al-Manar and Al-Noor media stations, a television station and a radio station that are affiliated to Hezbollah. We know that there have been, again, these evacuation orders issued for the south of Lebanon, a total of around 83, as we understand now. So this came after Hezbollah entered the war. This was in the early hours of Monday morning. Missiles, rockets and drones were fired at the Israeli port city of Haifa, which then the Israelis responded to with these huge wave of blasts across southern Lebanon. A huge wave of evacuation orders for some 53 towns were issued on Monday, so people were trying to make their way out. Then later on Monday afternoon, this shock announcement in many ways from the Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, announcing that he was banning Hezbollah's military wing and banning its military operations. We can take a listen to his statement on that.
The Lebanese state declares its absolute and unequivocal rejection of any military or security actions launched from Lebanese territory outside the framework of its legitimate institutions, and affirms that the decision of war and peace rests exclusively with it. This necessitates the immediate prohibition of all Hezbollah security and military activities, considering them illegal, and obligates Hezbollah to surrender its weapons to the Lebanese state and confine its activities to the political sphere within constitutional and legal frameworks, thereby enshrining the state's monopoly on the use of force, reinforcing its full sovereignty over its territory.
The Hezbollah has indeed defied those orders from Nawaf Salam. We know that it's fired rockets and missiles into the Ramat David air base, and we heard just before we came on air more rocket attacks emanating from southern Lebanon into Israel. We've heard that the sirens have been alerted in those border areas. So we know that we can expect more over the course of the day, but one thing is very clear is that Lebanon has now been dragged fully into what is now a regional war.
Well, thousands of mourners have gathered in the Iranian city of Minav for a mass funeral after dozens of people were killed in an attack on a girls' school. It's reported that most were children. Washington has stated it does not deliberately target schools and that it will assess reports, while Israel has outrightly denied carrying out the strike. As Iran buries the children and teachers killed in this attack, double standards were on display at the UN Security Council. The US president instead sent Melania Trump. She expressed her condolences for the Americans killed in the Middle East and expressed hope for peace for children all around the world. She did, however, fail to mention the slain children in Iran or anything about the thousands who were killed in Gaza. Well, the Pentagon responded with a familiar line as well, simply saying it is aware of the reports and that it will look into its military harming civilians.
We are aware of reports concerning civilian harm resulting from ongoing military operations. We take these reports seriously and are looking into them. The protection of civilians is of utmost importance, and we will continue to take all precautions available to minimize the risk of unintended harm.
Well, if the strike was controversial, the confusion that's followed has made it worse. Washington simply isn't on the same page. While Vice President J.D. Vance, he called it a preemptive move to stop Iran's nuclear capability, the U.S. Department State Secretary, he had a different message. Tehran has accused the U.S. of doing Israel's bidding. In fact, here's what the U.S.'s top diplomat had to say.
We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed.
Mr. Rubio admitted what we all knew. U.S. has entered a war of choice on behalf of Israel. There was never any so-called Iranian threat. Shedding of both American and Iranian blood is thus on Israel firsters. American people deserve better and should take back their country.
Well, what has begun as an Israeli-Iran confrontation over the nuclear ambitions, it has now transformed into a broader U.S.-linked military conflict. The attack itself was controversial. Many of the U.S. leaders framed it as preemptive strike. Others, they have been offering mixed messages, and intelligence on Iran's intentions, they have been disputed as well. Iran, in the meanwhile, it has rejected negotiation, accuses the U.S. of acting as Israel's tool, and has retaliated with its own military strikes regionally and globally. This particular conflict, it is seen as dangerous as well as destabilizing. In fact, joining me now is former diplomat and West Asia expert Anil Trigunyat. Mr. Trigunyat, thank you very much for speaking with RT India. You know, we have been seeing contrasting statements, especially on the reason for this particular war. Donald Trump, he says one thing. Marco Rubio, he says something else. In fact, Pete Hegseth, he said something that we should listen to before we talk about it. Let's listen to what the U.S. War Secretary he had to say.
To the media outlets and political left screaming endless wars, stop. This is not Iraq. This is not endless. I was there for both. Our generation knows better, and so does this president. He called the last 20 years of nation-building wars dumb, and he's right. This is the opposite.
Mr. Trigunyat, the official line is about stopping Iran's nuclear program, but what was it? Iran's nuclear program? Is it protecting Israel? Can you help us understand the full picture here?
Well, I think that this is very clear that the real end game of the United States was clearly outlined by President Trump himself, and that was a regime change. And that is the first thing. As you know, that United States and Israel have been wanting to do so for quite some time, more so Israelis, because Israel feels threatened, and this considers it as an existential threat. They have been suffering from this Moab syndrome, both Iran and Israel, and they've been itching to go to war. But that has not happened. It was only in June, first time, that both countries directly fought with each other, which was eventually mediated by the United States and allowing a face-saving to Iran, which through their attack on their Al-Udeid air base. But thereafter, the playbook was exactly the same this time also, continuing negotiations. Yeah. When you arrive at certain discussion, when you arrive certain results, and we have to not listen to anybody else, but the Omani's foreign minister, who has been the one who has been negotiating on both sides, said that they are almost very much near, and Iran had agreed to almost everything except the missiles. So once the agreement nears, it is at that time that Israel also feels threatened, that if the agreement is signed like it happened in Obama's time, then obviously they'll be at a disadvantage. And their main objective and the threat is not eliminated. That is the Ayatollah Khomeini's. If you remember, the Israel wanted to take out and decapitate Ayatollah even in June itself. But that time, President Trump prevented them. But this time they were able to convince. And as then Rubio says, that shows that why they had to eventually get in, because United States supports Israel's primacy in the region. Yeah. They are committed to Israel's security in the region at any cost, whatever be the cost. And therefore, they both consider Iran, and Iran has also been calling them a greater Satan and a small Satan, and, death to America, these have been the real things.
Yeah. But despite that, Mr. Trigunyat, how much is this about America's own red lines? What is your understanding of that?
I don't think America has any red lines in this, because Iran was not a threat to America in any way. Yep. And nor is it comparable to America's immense power that it has. Other thing that I feel is that their one of the other objectives could be what they did in Venezuela, which is the largest oil producer or with oil reserves, controlling that. And Iran happens to be the third largest after the United States. So possibly trying to even control that somehow by eliminating this regime and removing it to that extent so that they could have a larger geopolitical game, contain China, supplies to China in that sense. That's also one real thing, but I doubt very much that the current regime has been thinking on those lines to the extent that they will go to war. Because often it has been felt, and I also tended to believe at one time, that President Trump was not interested in wars or long wars, or because doesn't want to get involved in them. He, in fact, wants to solve the wars. But he threatens countries. But one thing is there, you start a war, but you don't know how to end it. It becomes extremely difficult and messy, and that's what is proving to be there.
Do you feel there is an end game for America, if at all there is an end game for America?
I don't think. I mean, it is very difficult to say the end game. I mean, you have to go back to the history. Just 25 years ago, you have seen 2003 when Iraq was invaded, what happened there. I was ambassador to Libya. I have seen that the invasion of Libya and attack on Libya, what is left there. You have seen what is happening in Syria. So wherever they have gone, the two things have happened. One is destabilization, and second is the growth in extremism and radicalism. Now, if the war does not stop now, West Asia is a very critical geography. We are already seeing the bombs going here and there and missiles hitting everybody. Now, that is going to be very disastrous, both for Iran as well as for the West Asia as a whole region.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Anil Trigunia, thank you very much for speaking with RT India, sir.
Thank you.